This is the SETN Podcast with Chris Goforth and Chandler Morrison, covering high school football in Chattanooga and the Southeast Tennessee area. The SETN Podcast.
Welcome in this week to SETN Preps. I'm Chris Goforth. He is Chandler Morrison. We normally come to you through the realms of a podcast called SETN Preps. We've done it every year. We're going into our third season, but we thought we'd try something a little bit new this week, something that is a little bit exclusive, where we are going to take it to video. So you'll get SETN Preps, the video. We're going to talk a little bit about schedules today. But first, again, let me take a minute. Let me remind you where all you can find us. We're pretty much on every platform that you can think of for podcasting. We're on Spotify. We're on Pandora. We're on iTunes. We're on Apple Podcast. Wherever you download your podcast from, that's where you can find SETN Preps. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Chandler and I have spent the summer, while everybody else has been in quarantine and dealing with the pandemic, we've been talking to high school football coaches. So we visited with guys like Charles Fant at Notre Dame, Jeremy Boskin at Boyd Buchanan. We have spoke with Mike Connor, the new coach at Silverdale. We've also talked with Kurt Jones over at Chattanooga Central. We're going to be talking with Coach Chris Brown at Red Bank. So we're going to continue to talk to coaches all the way up until we finally get ready to play football, Chandler, on the 21st of August. And I think I speak for all of us when I say it can't get here soon enough, given the way this offseason has gone.
Yeah, I can't get here soon enough, Chris. I think we're all ready for some sense of normalcy. And, Chris, I just want to tell all our viewers out there, you finally see that we were not lying when we told you we had faces made for radio and podcasts. So you finally get the exclusive on that one. So
that's true. Now, here's what we're going to do today. We have done for the last couple of years, we have always done a preseason schedule podcast where Chandler and I go through, we talk about the matchups we're most looking forward to seeing. So we're going to do that. We're going to give you some underrated matchups, maybe a couple of matchups you're not necessarily familiar with, or maybe ones you may have overlooked, but ones that we think you should pay attention to. Then we'll talk a little bit about who's got tough schedules that's really going to challenge them, and who we think has schedules that are built for success. So, Chandler, if you're ready, let's go ahead. Let's talk about the games that we are most looking forward to seeing this year in high school football. And I'm going to let you start us off and give us your rundown of your top 5 teams.
Do you want me to start from 5 or 1, or how you want to do that, Chris?
However you want to do it.
All right, we'll start from 5. We'll build up. All right, how's that sound? My top 5 matchups, number 5, I've got Howard versus East Hamilton. And I know we're trying to stay away from rivalries, but this is a region matchup. Not really a rivalry per se, but it is a big matchup. So many great storylines come out of Region 2 4A. We talked to a lot of those coaches in that region so far. And 2 of the biggest storylines are East Hamilton and Howard. They've kind of been the feel-good story over the past year. 2 great head coaches, a lot on the line when they play in Week 11. That's a Week 11 matchup, by the way, right at the end of the season. It was a second seed battle last year, and I think it'll be that this year. Maybe, possibly, who knows? They might take that step, and it could be the battle for the first seed. But both these teams are on the come up. It's going to be a great game to watch, Chris. At number 4, go ahead. You got a comment on that one?
No, I was going to say, yeah, I agree with you exactly. I mean, I think those are in that region itself is one where everybody tends to beat each other up anyway. So that's one of those matchups that I think, especially a late season matchup, if both teams can get there relatively healthy, I agree that has a chance to be I think a really good matchup.
Yeah, and at number 4, I've got Red Bank versus Ooltewah. That's in Week 2. Ooltewah always has the big play factor. It seems like that's just like a common theme. Like we have these programs that they're known for this certain offensive system, or they're known for having this kind of players, or it just seems that Ooltewah always has that kind of big play factor with them. I'm excited to see what they do this year. Red Bank is a team we talked about. They have a lot of star players. Now, let's just go ahead and say this. If Alcoa wasn't in their classification, we probably would have saw a lot of success for them over the past few years as far as getting to the state title game and everything. But that pesky Alcoa team is always the death of everybody in 3A. I like this game because I think it'll be a high-scoring affair. I think both of these offenses have evolved over the season, over the offseason, and could easily be like a 35-34 game. You know, this game last year, I think it was 17-16 or something like that, Chris. It was a really tight game.
Yeah, it was, and I expect this year should be another good one. Look, we could talk about Red Bank. I feel like we could talk about them with every game they play because I really think that Red Bank, from a non-region standpoint into their region games, I think they've got one of the tougher schedules in the area. I mean, they have really loaded for bear.
And I agree with you, Chris. I think that they have done a phenomenal job in scheduling tough games. If you're somebody who likes somebody who schedules tough games, look no further than Red Bank. Number 3, I've got Meigs County versus South Pittsburgh in Week 8. That was a game that was a great game last season. That one was, by the way, here's a little factoid. We're coming back with the factoids now, Chris, now that we're getting closer to the season. I know you were missing those little nuggets. But the 2 games that Meigs County lost last season were to Peabody and South Pittsburgh. You knew that, but they lost by the exact same score of 27-16.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's a little deja vu right there. You know, and I'm not sure where Meigs County is, you know, with Aaron Swafford and all that kind of stuff. With him, he graduated this year, Chris, class of 2020. And I'm right on that. He's not coming back, is he?
No, he did graduate. I think the thing for them, Chandler, is going to be whether or not – look, he was a dynamic playmaker. You don't replace a guy like Aaron Swafford. Guys like that don't just grow on trees somewhere and you just go out and pick the next one. They're going to have to try to manufacture some things. They do have a lot of guys coming back, though, and I think Meigs County has a shot at being really, really good again. I think they're going to be right back in that mix again in 2A in terms of competing for a state championship. And, look, we've said it time and time again, South Pittsburgh right now I think is the favorite, certainly the favorite in East Tennessee. I think they're the favorite in the state to win a state championship in 1A.
And I think with Meigs County, I think the big thing, I think you kind of nailed it on the head, was they are a really good team. But when you lose that X factor kind of player, you know, how do you evolve? That's the question. It's not how do you compensate, how do you evolve from that? Because every year is a different team, even when you got a lot of the same players. You know, I think and this is a good thing, Chris, that both these teams have a bye week right before this. And they had it last year, but they have it this year too. So they'll get to focus for almost 2 weeks, get to focus solely on each other. So that should be a great game to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if that one comes down to the last play. Whoever has the ball last wins that game.
It's one of those measuring stick games. I think that both programs would use that to see, okay, where are we right now? Where are we at this point in the season with both of them having eyes towards playing in Cookeville?
And at number 2, I've got Soddy Daisy versus Bradley Central, Week 10. I think this is a really good game. It was like an unexpected thriller last season, 49-35. Bradley ended up winning that game. Both these offenses had huge weapons. Trey Curry for Bradley Central, Isaac Barnes, the quarterback for Soddy Daisy, who we talked to earlier this offseason. Go catch that on iTunes and Spotify and all that. We're not too shameless to plug here.
No.
Offense is the main focus with both these teams, I feel. Not that they don't put focus on defense, but I feel like these are 2 really good offensive teams. Big schools on either side of the metro area. Late in the season, a huge matchup for both teams. I think this is going to be one that last year everybody was kind of like, yeah, Soddy Daisy Bradley, who cares? But I think you're going to turn around this year and everybody's going to be all eyes on there because of the game you had last year. I just honestly, Chris, with the way these 2 teams are going, I just don't see how this one could sputter out before we get to that point in the season. Do you think it might? I mean, I don't foresee that, except maybe something grand and something like that happen.
Yeah, I think the only way this matchup gets derailed, Chandler, is going to be through injuries, and we don't know what it's going to look like this year in terms of what happens if somebody tests positive and those kind of things that could literally. I mean, you get a couple of positive tests on one team, and you're talking about really derailing an entire season. So, so long as everybody stays healthy, I agree with you. I think it's a tremendous matchup.
And as many tough games as a lot of these teams have, 2 weeks. I mean, you're talking about 2 weeks is probably going to be the mandatory, like have those kids out. That could make or break your season depending on when that happens, Chris.
And let me tell you, I'm glad that we were able to save the first 2 weeks of the season, August 21st and August 28th, because if you sit down and you start going through the schedules and you look at the number of really good games that are on the slate for those first 2 weeks, it is, I mean, there is some good football to be played week 1 and week 2 across our area. So I'm super excited about a lot of those games early on.
And number 1, Chris, I think this is no surprise to anybody, seeing as it's the game we didn't get last year. It's Red Bank and South Pittsburgh in week 6. This is probably the greatest matchup in the Chattanooga area that never came to pass.
And look, and it's going to be just as good this year.
Yeah.
South Pittsburgh's loaded. Red Bank is loaded up still.
Yeah.
I thought Red Bank was really good last year. And you and I are going to talk with Chris Brown this week for a podcast that'll be released later on. I'm not so sure that Red Bank isn't going to be better this year in 2020 than they were in 2019. And they were really good last year. And again, South Pittsburgh, don't tell me they're a 1A team. All right. That's not a 1A team. That's not 1A talent.
Yeah.
They're going to
with
be
the
able
depth they had this season.
They're going to be able to run. They're going to be able to run with whoever they go up against at any level. So that, again, and that's one of those September 25th matchups that I just think that's, again, you and I, we hyped it. We talked a ton about it last year, and we were both disappointed when the Lightning took that game away from us. I hope we get there to September 25th and we actually get this game, because I'm with you. A spoiler alert, that's the number 1 game on my list too, Chandler. So,
well, and here's the thing about that game. I hope we do get that game, Chris, because that is such a huge game, such a huge match. And you talk about Red Bank. We kind of thought that Red Bank was going to, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. They've lost some talent, this and that. But, Chris, the more we look at, the more we hear, the more that, the rumor mill cycle up, the more we see these. I mean, I just think this might actually be a better game than what we could have had last year.
It may very well be. I guess the big news lately has been B.J. Ragland from Red Bank getting an offer from Tulane. I think he's got a couple of what I would consider to be mid-major offers right now, and he's a special player. So again, that matchup's going to be good. Matchup's going to be great. Let's just get there, and I want to see that game get played this year, because again, that game will be at South Pittsburgh too. I don't know what seating's going to look like, but I'm going to tell you, I think the demand to get in to see that game from folks from both communities, both the Red Bank community and the South Pittsburgh community, is going to be absolutely huge, with people that want to be able to get in and watch that game, because it's going to be tremendous.
That might be a game that needs to go to Findlay, to be honest with you.
No, you will. Yeah. No, that'll never happen. Listen, if I'm South Pittsburgh and I got a team like that and they're going to have to come play in our house, we ain't moving that thing anywhere. You're going to come down and you're going to experience all that is playing at South Pittsburgh, which is not a fun place to go play for most teams as a visiting team. So, no, if I'm South Pittsburgh, we're fine. Whatever our requirements are that we got to have to be able to get people in, we'll live with that. Whatever the gate is, we'll live with it. But this is a game you want to play this on your home turf when you got a team like that coming in.
Well, hopefully that's a game that's going to be on TV, Chris. Hopefully.
I have no control over any of that, but I do concur. All right, Chandler, let me give you my top 5. Now, I did something a little different. I stayed away from rivalry games, which we always do when we do this segment, and I stayed away from the region games, because the region games, to me, they're just too easy, right? So I went at number 5. I went East Hamilton and Soddy Daisy. I talked about some of those really good early season matchups we have.
That's one of them.
Week 2, that's one. East Hamilton at Soddy Daisy in week 2. You're talking about 2 teams with 2 returning starters at quarterback, 2 guys that both threw for over 2,000 yards last year, 2 quarterbacks that can sling it a little bit. Isaac Barnes, friend of the podcast out at Saudi Daisy, he's playing quarterback for them.
Shout
Haynes
out.
Eller, Haynes Eller, quarterback at East Hamilton. He's coming off a fantastic year. We've already talked with his head coach in Grant Reynolds, and Coach Reynolds told us that, I think he's got total confidence in the play of his quarterback to turn Haynes Eller loose this year. I think there's a lot of reason to be excited for both of these programs and what they could do. It's a good early season matchup. That's my number 5. My number 4, I mentioned it earlier. I could have literally have put Red Bank on here every week if I wanted to. I think Red Bank they've got a ridiculous schedule. October the 9th, Red Bank is at Ray County. That will be, again, you're talking about contrasting styles a little bit offensively. Ray County, they're going to run their wing tee. They're going to line up tight, and they're going to pound the football at you between the tackles as much as they can. Red Bank, with those athletes, they want to kind of spread you out. I think that has the makings of being a really good game, and I think at that point in the season, Chandler, where we're roughly going to be 3 to 4 weeks away, 4 weeks, from the start of the playoffs. It's another one of those measuring stick games for both of those teams, because I think both of them have playoff aspirations. I think Red Bank can make a deep run. Ray County, we'll see. We'll see how deep Ray County can go. They were the only team out of that 4A region or 5A region last year that won a playoff game. So we'll see what that means for Ray County. That's my number 4 game. My number 3 game happens September the 25th. Tyner is at Alcoa.
Okay.
Big matchup. Ton of athletes will be on the field. I hate that is a road game for Tyner. I hate they have to go to Alcoa to play that game, but I like that matchup. Wayne Turner's another one of those coaches in our area that he doesn't back down. They're going to always play a tough schedule. They're going to play a really competitive schedule. I really kicked around the idea of putting that Tyner Boyd Buchanan game on this list that will kick off the season. But Tyner at Alcoa, that's one that I really want to be able to see. Meigs County is at Greenback, and that's my number 2 game. Meigs County, a contender in 2A, Greenback, a contender in 1A. That's happening in week 2. We're going to find out early on just how good both of those football teams are. Somebody's going to leave that game in week 2 feeling really, really good about themselves. I think Greenback they will end up being the team that South Pittsburgh faces in the semifinals, with a chance to go to Cookeville and play for a state championship. And I think if Meigs County has aspirations of making another deep November run, this is the type of game that you want to see where you are. You're going to have a good feel for where your football team is when you come out of this matchup. And then Chandler, as you mentioned, Red Bank at South Pittsburgh on September the 25th. Again, we talked about it. I can't tell you how much we talked about this game last year and how much we both wanted to see that game get played. We weren't able to see that happen last year, and just like you, I certainly hope that's the game that we get this year. It's the one that I can tell you I am most looking forward to watching is Red Bank and South Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can tell you probably about every episode after that Red Bank and South Pittsburgh game didn't happen, we probably mentioned it in every single episode because we were so down on that.
It was almost like we should have had a wake or something for that game not being played. It was a bit depressing. I hope we get it this year because, again, those are 2 fine football teams. Both of them are very, very well coached. And look, there's going to be a whole bunch of speed on the field. There's going to be a whole bunch of guys that are Saturday players that will be out there, and I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be awesome. Chandler, let's move on now to our underrated matchups of the year. What do you have on your list of the underrated matchups?
I will go from 1 to 5 this time because I don't really think the order with this matters too much because I just think these are all underrated. Number 1, I've got Chattanooga Central versus Notre Dame in week 1. Both of these teams had a rough 2019. Not they were awful, but just something happened. They fell off the rails, and it just kind of snowball effect. And the fact that this game last season was a forfeit. It was a Notre Dame win. They ended up forfeiting that win. So we never really it kind of was odd the way it ended up. That just shows how both of those teams' seasons went last year. So this will be a tight game. I think we'll see what direction these two teams are headed in right out of the gate. Like I said, these two teams, and we talked to both Kurt Jones and Charles Fant, and I think this is going to be a great, fantastic matchup. These are two teams that are ready to get back on the field. They're ready to kind of avenge last season. And you get right out of the gate in week 1, you get two teams that are in the pretty much same boat, and they get to play each other right out of the gate. And I think that's going to be a good game to watch, and that's probably my most underrated game because I don't think a lot of people are looking at that game and thinking, oh, that's a wonderful match. Like last year you might have, going into that season. But now you turn around and you're like, I don't know about this matchup. I don't know how good it's going to be, blah, blah. But I think it really is going to be underrated there. You have any comments on that, Chris?
Well, Notre Dame breaking in a new offense. They're going to look completely different this year. It won't be the single wing that we've seen from them the last couple of years. They're going to try to go a little more spread and sling the ball around a little bit. And then, last year and following Chattanooga Central, and we've already visited with Coach Jones over the course of this summer, they went really, really young last year. I mean, he talked to us about having at one time 9 freshmen on the field that he played last year. They played a lot of young guys, so there's still a young football team at Central, but he's a young football team with some experience. Charles Fant at Notre Dame, he kind of went through the same thing last year. Injuries forced him, though, to have to play a lot of young guys last year. So he's bringing back some guys that played a lot of snaps. I agree, Chandler. I tell you, you've convinced me with this game. I think that game has a chance to be, a pretty good matchup. And I think it's one that's is like you said, I think it's one that's probably going to be a little overlooked by most people.
Yeah. At number 2, and I had this one on there because Red Bank, we talk about their schedule being so loaded. You forget that East Hamilton's on their schedule. They've got week 4. It's East Hamilton, Red Bank. Now you're shaking your head now because you're like, man, I should have had that in my top 5. but two powerhouse teams that we've already talked about. We're going, we talked to Grant Reynolds. We're going to talk to Chris Brown there at Red Bank. I think it's underrated because both teams have bigger matchups on their schedule, and they have bigger fish to fry, so to speak. And so I think a lot of people are going to be like, then you get down to it and you look at like, whoa, these two teams play each other. Like, what is going on here? Why are we not talking about this? I think this is going to be an underrated matchup. It's at Red Bank, so the bigger class team is on the road. Before week 2, by the way, here's another nugget for you. Before week 4, these teams play 2 common opponents before the 4th week. They both play Saudi and they both play Signal going into this game.
Wow.
So, we'll know a lot more about these teams coming into this one than we probably will any other 2 teams in week 4. When we go into week 4, we will know more about Red Bank and we'll know more about East Hamilton and we'll know more about that game and how it's going to transpire than any other game we will have this season.
Yeah, again, it's another one of those really good matchups between 2 really good football teams and both teams that are going to throw up a bunch of athletes on the field.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. At number 3, I've got something kind of weird here. I've got CCS versus Baylor McCallie. Okay, because
talk about tough schedules.
Yeah. So I've got that, and the reason I put them together is because I could put both of them there, and everybody would be like, "Well, I didn't want to take up more space than I had to here, Chris." But this is something we talk about quite a bit. If you're CCS, you keep Baylor and McCallie on that schedule because eventually they're going to be on your schedule, and you ain't going to be able to take them off. This is a measuring stick game like we always talk about, and I think we sell this one short because it's Baylor, it's McCallie, it's a Division II AA team against AAA, the big dogs. But watch out for these games. I'm really curious to see where CCS is here and whether they're able. And do I think they're going to win these games? Absolutely not, Chris. Like right now, if you put a gun in my hand, I'm saying no. But I'm always interested to see out of the gate how they do against McCallie and Baylor, because if they put some points on the board against McCallie and Baylor and those defenses, you better watch out, because they're probably going to load a lot of points on everybody else. Because we talked about this last year, when you play Baylor and McCallie right out of the gate, everything else is so slow. Like the when you're on defense and you're watching that offense, it's so slow. When you're on offense and you're reading the defense, it's just so slow, because you got used to that like D1 speed, But yeah, I think that's going to be, and those are two underrated matchups, I think, basically because I think they're measuring stick games, but also it's underrated because it actually shows us where CCS is, because we talk about this all the time, and we actually kind of talked about this with Charles Fant in our last podcast about, could these teams in AA move up to AAA potentially, and where are they at? And CCS is one of those teams that I think will end up moving up eventually.
Oh, I think it's going to happen. I think what you're going to see, and we'll supposedly we're going to have reclassification coming after this season is over, and things will look a little different for 2021. I think it's highly likely that CCS ends up in the large school division of the private schools. The fact is that school is growing too fast.
Yeah.
They are just busting at the seams. What they have done is they have invested, though, in their athletic facilities. That football field is gorgeous. The gym there is nice. They've put in some additional seating out. One of the cool things I like that they did at CCS is they moved in the gym. They've moved the student section to behind the goal, and it's great. Those kids get into it. They have been a team now that they're sort of, a decade plus, I guess, into playing football, they have kind of started to develop their own traditions there. Yeah. And it's been kind of fun to watch that program make progress. And certainly Mark Mariakis is a guy that I think can take them even further than what they have been before. And you take a look at their schedule. They're not afraid to schedule up and play tough games. And I mean, playing Baylor or McCallie is bad enough, but playing them both in consecutive weeks, that's tough. That's tough on anybody.
Yeah, and Chris, you talk about CCS and the progress they've made. I remember when I played high school football back in the glory days, CCS was actually in the public school division. They actually played Sequatchie County year in, year out. We played Sequatchie County. We played CCS. We played Notre Dame year in, year out. And even looking at both of those programs, especially CCS, the progress they have made from being kind of the team that, I remember the first year, my freshman year, I wasn't even playing football yet. We were just stomping them. We were just boom, boom, boom. We had some pretty good teams. We were just stomping them. We stomped them our sophomore year. And all of a sudden, we got to my senior year, and I was playing football, and we got out there on the field, and I remember we lost that game. And we were disappointed because we had a really good season up to that point, and that game threw us off the rails. But I think that was kind of a turning point in CCS. But you're right. They have made some tremendous progress, and it's been weird to see that team that I used to beat up on when I was in high school. Now they're the talk of the town, really. And I really think they get overlooked a lot of times because I don't know. It just feels like they get overlooked a lot of times just because they're in that Division II AA, and they're kind of quiet. They play, they kind of seem quiet a lot of time. You feel the same way, Chris?
Well, I think what you got in the early days at CCS with that program was a bunch of kids that had never played football before. I remember talking to Barry Loyal, who started that program.
Great kicking core, though.
And Coach Loyal talked about how, look, I'm having to teach kids how to put shoulder pads on. I'm having to teach kids, all these things that a lot of kids that grow up playing football, coming up through a youth program somewhere, they know how to do. He had a whole lot of kids at CCS that had never played football. Now that has changed. They've got a strong youth program there, a strong middle school program. And so by the time they're getting to high school, they've got some of the basics down. And that's, I think, has been as much to do with the growth or the success that they have started to have in football. I think a lot of that comes from just the fact that they've been able to get some kids with some experience in there that by the time they're ninth graders, 10th graders, they've got a little bit of familiarity with how things are done. And that certainly wasn't the case early on.
Yeah, you're right. Number 4, I've got one that you had in your top 5. I think it's a little underrated, and that's Meigs County Greenback. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times Meigs County kind of gets, thrown to the wayside because their region is not in the Chattanooga area. They play all these teams away. Then Greenback, they're in Knoxville, or up around that area. So then they go out there and play. Well, then no one really realizes it until they get to see the score come across. Oh, Meigs County did this or whatever. I think it's going to be an underrated game for the reasons you said. I think it's going to be a great game, Chris. But I think it is a little underrated because I think it's going to go below a lot of people's noses, except for the South Pittsburgh fans. I think that's the only ones that are really going to be, paying attention to that score and paying attention to that game, seeing as they play Meigs County later in the season, and they'll probably end up playing Greenback in the postseason.
Yeah, again, that's one of those games to me. I know that week when you and I get together to record SETN Preps, that's going to be one of the big games that you and I are going to be talking about, because that game in week 2 that may be the game. I mean, that may be the biggest game of the week. And there's some really good matchups week 1, week 2, but for my money, I think that's as good as it gets.
And the last one I've got on here, it's kind of a rivalry, one of those games. It's not really a traditional rivalry, but it is a rivalry, and that's Sequatchie County versus South Pittsburgh. Because I think that we're going to learn a lot about both those teams in that first week. We've seen when South Pittsburgh has had good years, they played that Sequatchie County game early and had success and been able to do whatever they need to do. But for me, where is Sequatchie County at? And I think that's a big question for a lot of people, because out of that region, you're looking at Upperman, and you're looking at Sequatchie County, you're looking at Smith County. All 3 of those teams are out there to see who's going to be the top dog. Where is Sequatchie County going to be this year? Where's their quarterback play is? I know they've got some players on the outside, some tight ends, that kind of stuff, but where's their line? Those kind of questions we're going to see week 1 against South Pittsburgh, because I can't think of a better test right out of the gates than having to play South Pittsburgh. Do you know of anybody out the gates that you, besides Baylor and Colley, that you would want to play week 1?
No, I mean, you're exactly right with what you're saying, Chandler. And I think just to kind of add, expound upon what you were saying, is I think if you go back and look, it feels like, even though Sequatchie County hasn't necessarily had a ton of success early on against South Pittsburgh, it feels like they have been able to keep the games close. They've been really competitive. Last year, what was it, a 21-7 win for South Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
And I think those 21 points are about as low scoring as anybody was able to hold South Pittsburgh all year. So Sequatchie County, whatever the game plan is, Sequatchie County always seems to have the game plan to be able to handle South Pittsburgh in the early part of the season.
Yeah, and they always keep that game is always close. It's in the past, I will say in the past 5-6 years, it's been pretty close just about year in, year out. And I think Sequatchie County kept it close, and then they were playing, I think when Adam Kane had come in, he ended up beating them, and then they kind of went back and forth. We beat them for a couple of years there, but I say Sequatchie County did. I got to keep my alliances hidden from the audience there, Chris. But yeah, I mean, they've always been kind of close games, and I think this will be a good measuring stick. Really, and you think about it, it is going to be one for South Pittsburgh too. How good are they out of the gate? That's the question they're going to be asking, because they know. I think Vic Ryder knows when it comes down to week 9, week 10, he's going to have a really solid football team. But right out of the gates, where are you right out of the gates? That's the big question.
I think that's one of the things you can always say about South Pittsburgh, and you've been able to say that for years, is whatever they are in week 1 or week 2, they're going to be a whole lot better come November. I mean, you've seen it for years. Yeah, they get better as the season goes along. Chandler, let me give you mine. There are 2 games that really stand out to me as I think are underrated matchups, games that probably should get more attention or deserve more attention than what they will get. Now, I've got 5 that I'll tell you about, but I got 2 that really stand out. One of those is Howard at Tyner. That game is going to be played on September 11th. I would expect there will be a lot of fanfare around the area at all of the games on September 11th. It will be the 19th anniversary of the 9/11 attack. So I would think there'll already be a lot of emotions that night anyway. But you've got Howard at Tyner. Remember, Howard won that game last year. They upset Tyner at home. This year, they've got to go to Tyner, and I think revenge is going to play a huge role. Those kids, a lot of them know each other. They've played against each other growing up, and now they'll get a chance to square off against each other again. We talked with John Starr, the Howard head coach, here last week, I guess it was, and he talked about the mammoth size that he has on his offensive and defensive lines. They are going to be humongous. Now, Tyner, they're going to be without Jeremiah Baptiste. They will have a little bit of a different look to them this year, I would assume. But look, the one thing you know about a Wayne Turner coach team, number one, they're going to fight you right up until the final whistle. They're going to play absolutely hard every play. And the one thing that Coach Turner loves to do is he will have a stable of running backs, probably about 5 or 6. I've seen games where he's used as many as 9 different ball carriers, and they just keep coming at you in wave. He's always got a set of fresh legs that he can come in and carry the ball. So that's the reason why I look forward to this Howard-Tyner matchup. And, again, I think the fact that Howard was able to upset Tyner last year just adds so much intrigue to the way these two teams are going to play this year.
Yeah, I in my first drafts of kind of figuring out what my top 5 was going to be. I think I had that in my top 5 when I first going down the list. I think it was because it was higher up looking down the schedules, but I did have that in my first draft. And, it's actually in my honorable mentions I've got over here right now, but you're right. I think that's going to be a phenomenal matchup. I was trying to steer away from it because it is kind of a rivalry, non-rivalry game. It's one of those kind.
It is.
Yeah. So it was one of those games. It's like, it's not like, you don't think of it as like a Marion County, South Pittsburgh or Cleveland Bradley or whatever, but it is a rivalry.
My second game is Fayetteville at Marion County. Now, hear me out on this.
Okay. All right. You're going to have to convince me here, Chris.
All right. It's number one, it's week 1.
Okay.
So it's a week 1 game. Fayetteville was really good last year, and they thumped Marion County when they played this game last year. There is Fayetteville last year, Chandler, that was their year. There were a lot of folks in Fayetteville. They were all hyped up over the idea of Fayetteville football last year to be competitive, and they thought that was going to be their year to make a deep playoff run. And they were really, really good. And then they had an eligibility issue, and they ended up having to forfeit some games, and that ended up costing them. Marion County struggled last year, especially on offense. Well, in comes a new coach in Dale Pruitt with I think a new attitude. I think there's some fresh excitement around the Marion County program. And I think in week 1, they get a chance to get off to a great start with a victory over Fayetteville, a team that lost a lot last year to graduation. Fayetteville is not going to be the same team that Marion County saw a year ago. I think Marion County is going to be improved, and I don't think Fayetteville will be as good. We talk about those measuring stick games. We talk about games in week 1 and week 2 of the season. There's so many good matchups out there. I just think this one here is one that has a chance to be overlooked by a lot of people, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Marion County finds a way to get that win in week 1 against Fayetteville.
So you're looking at this from the aspect that it's going to be probably a good game to watch. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, I think it could be a good game to watch. I think there's a lot of question marks about Fayetteville. I don't know how much of a spring either team was able to have. Probably not much, if at all. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of teaching going on from both coaching staffs here over the next couple of weeks to get us to this game. This may not be the prettiest game of the year. This may not be the game where you want to break out the DVD later and, if you wanted to introduce somebody to high school football in our area, this may not be the game you would want to show them from that standpoint. But I think in terms of good football, underrated matchup, a chance for to learn about both of these teams. I think this Fayetteville-Marion County game, I think it gives you that.
What are you putting for the over-under on that game right now?
Oh, man, don't ask me to handicap. What was the score last year? I mean, let me refer to the guru here, Murphy Fair, and see what I want to find out.
It was 33-6.
33-6. Thank you for pulling that up for me. Yeah. So over under, I don't think there's 40 points scored. How about that? So let's put it at 35 and a half.
35 and a half. Okay.
35 and a half total points.
Okay. I was wondering if you were going to go for like 10 or something, trying to say that it's going to be like a tire fire offense or something.
Look, I think we'll see, right? I mean, Fayetteville graduation hit them pretty hard. This is not the same team that there was a year ago, and Marion County is going to still hold on to some of that wing tee from what I understand, but there'll be a little bit of some hybrid spread stuff coming out of that wing tee as well. So I think they've got a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah, I do too, Chris.
Or at least be improved. How about that?
Yeah.
From where they have been. So those are my two favorite of my underrated matchups. I'll throw a couple others at you. How about Bledsoe County and East Ridge in week 2?
I like that one. That was one that I had on my honorable mentions of the underrated.
Yeah, and I'll bring up, too, going back to Marion County for a second, since we're going to talk about Bledsoe County here, don't forget the coaches, and we talked about this with Murphy Fair. The coaches actually picked Marion County to finish ahead of Bledsoe County in that region. So, what's Bledsoe County going to look like? We'll see. And then, East Ridge is always going to have some athletes. They're always going to have some speed. They're going to have some guys that they can put out there. I think that's a big matchup early on in week 2. Walker Valley at Bradley Central. You're talking about a matchup of, again, 2 really good quarterbacks. It comes early in the season in week 2. I look forward to that one. And then my final one, Notre Dame against McMinn County. You talk about a coach not being afraid to build a tough schedule. Look at the schedule that Charles Fant puts together at Notre Dame every year. That's a tough one. McMinn County, great measuring stick for them. Fighting Irish will have a new offense. We'll see how it looks. And McMinn County, the one thing about McMinn County, it's every single year, Chandler, they always have size. They are always the team. They are always the team when they would show up at the Jamboree, and I don't get a chance to see a ton of McMinn County football, but they're always the team when they showed up at the Jamboree every year. When you watch them walk out on the field, they look the part. They've always got a bunch of big guys, especially in the trenches for them, and they play big boy football, and that's one that I'm really looking forward to as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on McMinn County. I mean, in the last year, they're always been big. They've always been big, but last year they just kind of put the size, the strength, and the system all in one go, and had a really great year last year. Of course, Maryville's in that region with them, so tough luck for them. But yeah, I agree with you on McMinn County.
Yeah, I want to look at a couple other games, Chandler, that didn't quite make my list. I mentioned that Boyd Buchanan Tyner game. I feel like that one should have been on the list here. Let's see. Soddy Daisy Red Bank, great game, but that's a huge rivalry game. We're going to get that one right off the bat. That may be one of the best rivalries in our area now, that because those two teams aren't in the same region or even in the same classification anymore, we don't talk about it as much. It doesn't get the same kind of hype that it once did, but that rivalry is still really, really strong. And we talked with Isaac Barnes about, how a lot of the old heads around the Soddy program and around the Red Bank program, this is the game that probably guys who are over 40, that if you ask them who's the big rival, the Red Bank folks will tell you it's Soddy, and the Soddy folks would tell you it's Red Bank, because, this used to be at one time, this was probably the game at times outside of Baylor McCallie probably the game that would be played in Hamilton County every year. So
Yep.
that's just a couple that didn't make my list that, but still games that I wanted to focus on a little bit as well. And also too, if we're going to talk about region games, Soddy Daisy, Ray County, that game, it's going to be played this year, October 16th. That game, the last 2 years, has gone on to decide who is region champs. Soddy Daisy's won it 2 years in a row. Both times they've been barn burners. I see no reason why this game will not be the same, and it's going to be at Soddy Daisy this year. Soddy trying to win 3 straight region championships, which is just unheard of at Soddy Daisy. So some good games out there, some really good games.
Yeah, Chris, I got a 3 for you real quick, and they were kind of obvious, so I didn't want to put them on there, and that's Howard East Hamilton. You know, that's a regional matchup. That's a region matchup at the end of the season. Bradley Central and Meade County. That'll probably be for the 2 seed in that region as well. And then I have Copper Basin versus South Pittsburgh. Not that I think that Copper Basin will win that, but that's going to be a good measuring stick to see where they are in that progress. Because that's big for them and the Grabowskis is where are they at in that process. Maybe they can keep that game close toward the end of the season, you know.
Well, you know, Chandler, one of the things we've done the last couple of years is we've really done a deep dive into the schedules. Don't have necessarily, not going to get too deep into it this year, partially because everything's been kind of wacky here the last couple of weeks trying to figure out when we were going to play and if we were going to play and all that kind of stuff. But I did want to hit on a couple of overall schedules that were out there. We've mentioned a couple of times the Red Bank schedule. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Soddy Daisy, Ottawa, East Ham, South Pittsburgh, and Ray County. That's crazy difficult for anybody. But that's what Red Bank's non-region matchups look like. And then we talk about a team that you just mentioned that a lot of people think can be poised to maybe not beat South Pittsburgh, but a team that maybe they can get a second shot at South Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and that's Copper Basin. They've got a team in Hayesville, North Carolina, on their schedule again this year, a team they probably should have beaten last year, but didn't. You know, they've got the usual 1A opponents on there. They're playing another team from out of Georgia as well. Andrews, North Carolina, they'll face, which last year they had problems with, but they get Andrews, North Carolina at home this year. We'll see if that can make a difference for them. But when you start talking about teams that have a really ridiculous schedule, I think Red Bank is at the top of that list. I'd put South Pittsburgh on there too. I think they've got a really tough schedule when you're talking about Meigs County and Red Bank. But when we start talking about teams that have a schedule that's built for success, I like the way this Copper Basin schedule lays out. I don't see any reason why Copper Basin can't finish 8-2, 7-3 at the worst going into the playoffs.
I'm right there with you with Copper Basin. Someone else that I think has an easier schedule, I'll kind of go with my 2 here real quick. Signal Mountain, not that I think it's a easy schedule, but I think it's a favorable schedule. Okay?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not so much about whose schedule is easiest, but it's about whose schedule is set up to be able to give them an opportunity to win games. And I think that's what we're looking at with a couple of these.
Now I think you're right. I mean, here's the thing about their schedule. They come right out of the gate with East Hamilton, then they get Hickson. Who knows what Hickson's going to look like this year? Then they get Red Bank, and then Whitwell. And we don't know where Whitwell's going to be. I don't think that Whitwell's going to win that game. You get Loudon, then you get East Ridge. You don't know where East Ridge is going to be this year. You don't know where Brainerd's going to be this year. Soddy Daisy, that's going to be a tough game, and it could be a game that's could be on my underrated list, honestly, after last year. Then you get McMinn Central, Abai, and Sweetwater. You know, if you're talking about a schedule that you can get some wins in and have a break before the playoffs, that's a schedule right there. I think it's a very favorable schedule. It was kind of hard to go through and find the easy schedule because I think a lot of these teams in our area, if they have a chance to win and make a deep run in the playoffs, they probably already have a tough schedule. I mean, that's the good thing about our area. With Tyner, with the hard schedule, I have Tyner on here. The reason I do is because I think Chattanooga Central is improved. Bledsoe County is not going to be a walk in the park in their region. Howard, that's a rivalry game. They lost that game last year. Marion County is going to be improved. They get Bledsoe County, Howard, Marion County, Alcoa right after Marion County. That bye week's week 2. So they got to do all this after week 2. They get Tellico Plains. That'll be kind of an easier game. Then they get Baylor and Webb School back-to-back. And then they got Brainerd and Polk County to end that season. But I think it's going to be a tough schedule. It's spaced. It's a little bit spaced out, but also the strength of that schedule is insane right there. Not as insane as Red Banks, but it's pretty tough.
No, it is. You're exactly right. It's that's a tough road that you have to go down. Interesting. I didn't know they played Marion County and Alcoa in consecutive weeks. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
And Bledsoe, if we talk about Bledsoe County, I think Bledsoe County and Marion County are going to be tough games for them. They got Bledsoe, Howard, Marion, Alcoa all in a 4-week span.
Yeah, wow.
So that's going to be tough for Tyner.
That's a tough gauntlet. Well, Chandler, I think we've gone through. We've talked about all of the. We've taken a look at the schedules, the games that we're most looking forward to. Again, want to remind folks, SETN Preps, that's our podcast. You can find it every week. We do it twice a week. We've already started 2 episodes a week, Monday and Thursday. That will continue through the state championship game. We're doing it now. We're still talking to coaches. And then every week on Monday, we'll give you a review of what happened on Friday night. And then on Thursday, we'll get you ready for the next, the following Friday night's action. So we do that every single week throughout the season. So make sure you're with us for that. And again, we're on all of the podcast platforms. Wherever you find your podcast at, you can find us. Thanks for taking a look at our Facebook page.
Yep.
And also thanks our website, setnpreps.com, where you can find a bunch of schedules. If you're looking for a schedule of your team, you can find it there.
Yeah, and Chris, if you look at those schedules, do you think we're wrong? Just go on anchor.fm, leave us a voice message. Tell us where we screwed up. Tell us where we didn't give this team enough credit or we gave this team too much credit. We'd love to hear from you.
That's right. So, again, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys again soon, and we'll look forward to talking more high school football here in Southeast Tennessee.
This is the SETN Podcast with Chris Goforth and Chandler Morrison, covering high school football in Chattanooga and the Southeast Tennessee area. The SETN Podcast.